I'm underneath this Sonoma again, getting started on this nightmare, and looks like, well gosh, we're going to be changing the fuel tank and fuel pump all in one assembly. $217 plus tax, with all the rust that we got on top of that tank. You'll see when I pull it out why I'm not going to mess with trying to change the fuel pump on that tank. Now this guy had, and I don't blame him for trying to fix his own car, but he didn't know what he was doing. And here's what I'm getting into here. This was his fuel line here, and here's the other end of it. And he did good for somebody who doesn't know, but he tried to graft and put flare fittings on, because somebody probably told him you have to flare those fittings. Well, on brake lines you're supposed to. I don't. I will if I need to, but on my own stuff and on old junk that somebody may have, I don't mess with flaring the fittings, because I can put compression fittings on and I can put them on right and they will not leak. But if you don't put them on right, then they might leak, or they might actually blow apart. But if you put them on right, that'll never happen. Anyway, I said that to say that he tried to flare these, and this one here he may have flared pretty good. It looks like he may have enough of a flare to actually seal against the little ball fitting on the inside of the brass that would go on to. But he didn't need flare fittings, and I'm going to show inside the shop here in a minute why he doesn't need that. But before I put this whole thing together, one thing I'm going to wind up doing is replacing some of these brake lines that go to the back. Well, actually, that's a return line for the fuel. This is a brake line up here, and it's in a bad way, and it's going to wind up blowing out. Fuel doesn't have much pressure on it, but I don't want either one of them to leak. The brake line is in a bad way, and before we put this whole mess back together, we'll probably wind up replacing this brake line here, because it's really, let's see, can we even see this? It is really crusty and rusty and bad. This is his old fuel filter. Let's see if we can see inside of that. That does not have a ball fitting. See, the inside of this brass fitting that a flare goes on has somewhat of a ball around that hole, and that's what the flare needs to seat against. Well, not only did he not flare most of his ends good, this is one of them here, he did not do a good job flaring them, for one thing. And this is a piece of line that he bought. It looks like 3/8 like transmission line. But here's the problem. He couldn't get these off of his old fuel filter. Well, I found it in the car and I got them off. Of course, I got, you know, a full shop full of tools. And here's what we got on these fittings. That is not a flare fitting. This is just an end, just like this. It goes inside. Actually, it might even be smaller. It is smaller. It goes inside the hole inside the filter, and there's an O-ring on it. This doesn't even have to be put on very tight because it seals with an O-ring, so you just snug it down. You don't crank it down real tight, just tight enough where it's not going to loosen up. So I had to go to the auto parts store and get these kits. I had to get 2 of them, and they're expensive. This is one kit here. It has the end that Well, we'll screw that onto the new one. That's going to screw right in there and seal up into the new one like that, and that's going to seal in there good because it's got the O-ring fitting in there. And then it comes with just a plain old compression fitting to put this on your other end of your fuel line. You cut this off wherever you need to, and you take a piece of sandpaper, you know, black, like 180 or 220 or something like that, and you just clean off the other end of the line that this is going to go on, and then you put this on there. We'll try to get some video of me doing that someplace. Anyway, I can't use none of this stuff that he brought me, that he already had on there, and this thing was leaking. He already had it all together, but it wasn't tight, it was leaking. So we're not going to use any of that. I bought 2 of these, and this is the shortest one the store had, is 18 inches. Actually, the store that I normally go to had one that was 18 inches and another one that was about a foot longer. So I guess the other one was probably about, I don't know, 30 inches. And for $10 more, this was like $16, and the other one was like $26. And I'm thinking, another $10 for another foot of just plain steel tubing? There's no way I'm going to buy that and cut it off. The other sister store about 5 miles down the street had it, so I went down there and bought the other one. So I got 2 of these for $16, or, you know, $32 plus tax, probably $33, $34 for all of it. It's pricey, but it's done once and for all, and you put that on there, and then it's just like factory. While I was turning this, I realized I'm wiping the ink off that has this arrow painted on here. I don't know if we can see that. Yeah, we can see that. Yeah, that's the direction of flow. So in case I do lose that, I'm just going to memorize that the way they had this direction of flow is that this rounded end is my inlet end, and this sharper welded end is my outlet end. I'm going to go on ahead and start making a copy of this. I'm not going to get it this close on this end. I may not even get it completely square. I just might make a long, instead of a right angle square, I might make a 90-degree angle jog in it. But anyway, I'm going to use one of these tubing benders that I don't use very often, but we'll just go on ahead and just carefully do this. It's going to kink on me, so I got to do just a little at a time. Now, the regular brake line stuff doesn't kink. It's designed not to do that. But this stuff does kink, so, and with the price of it, we can't be playing around damaging it. So. Well, you don't need to watch me struggling with it. You get the idea. I got it pretty good. I just don't have the right angle turn that was put in at the factory. We just got it like this. We'll cut this off at the right place. The front one can be straight. It's going to get cut off a lot shorter. We'll go on ahead and mount that. Okay, this is kind of like how this thing's going to wind up mounting up here. And this is the end that's going to go on this piece that I bent. This is the tube that's going to go on that. And this is why we're not going to mount it on there yet, because I got to take this tank off and put another tank on it. And I'd rather mess with this stuff out in the open instead of under here. So we'll just leave this. We'll put that on last. But for now, I am going to cut this piece back off that they put on there. And it might be the best one that they made, but I'm still going to take it off and go on ahead and put one of these compression unions on it. Well, I don't know how much of this I can get on video. I'm going to try. I built a rig for doing video like this where I don't have to see that little tiny screen on the camera. I can watch a monitor, but it's kind of occupied, not where I can get at it right now. Because I got too much stuff on that table and I'm using it for other work and don't have time to finish that work yet. I'm waiting for parts that are being sent here. For some reason, this tubing cutter is not working right. It doesn't want to crank down. I'm going to spray some WD in those threads. I think that might be my problem. I got a pliers here too, just in case. We got it. I got a piece of 180 here. These are kind of self-explanatory. How do you put them on? You put the nut on first. Slide it back there a little bit. Put your ferrule on. And then you slide this union up there. Screw the nut and the ferrule, or you screw the nut and the union together and tighten it on the ferrule. And you got to make sure that it stays all the way back there. You can take this end off if it's going to make it any easier. You got to get one side done first before you do the other side if you can. Sometimes they won't let you work that way. Not that one, that's too big. I'm using a line wrench or a flare nut wrench. Fit a while ago. There it goes, it fits now. Tighten this up on there. Make sure that is back there, all the way back. You don't have to use flare nut wrenches. I just like to, because it protects the corners of that brass outer nut. Now I got that on there tighter than I need it to be, but I don't want it to come loose. I'm sure it's not going to, but there's no way it can when I get done with it. Now this compression fitting is when you crush this nut onto that ferrule is squeezing tight onto the end of that fuel line, and it's crushing the fuel line, and this will not come back off the fuel line. You take that nut back off there again, you will not get this off. If you need to replace it, you have to cut back some more on the fuel line and put a whole new set on. But you can take that nut off and change the centerpiece of the compression fitting. You can change that, but you will not change this nut without cutting it back off of there and putting a new one on, because this does crush into that tubing. It's a good system. I keep these handy. If for some reason I lost this or damaged it, I just go in my drawer and get another one. This one came with the set, came with the tubing, but I always keep them handy because I never know when I'm going to damage one or just need only that to do a repair on something, and it saves me a trip to the store for that little $3 part. I need to decide where this is going to get cut off at. I want to say probably about here. We'll give it about 5 inches. Good, we don't have to work with exact measurements here. Okay, I'm going to put my nut on, then my ferrule. Push that in there. For getting the tank out, we're going to have a problem here. I'm crawling around in some rough positions. This fuel line here, I'm not going to try to separate this thing out here because it's all rusty. We're replacing the tank and the pump. I'm just going to go ahead and lift this thing up and break it off of there. And then I can deal with this thing underneath once I get the tank out. I gotta unplug this. I need 2 hands, so I can't do it with the camera in my hand. That's just a plug for the electric that goes here. And then the ground up there. If the ground doesn't come off good, we'll just cut the wires and then we'll stick them back together. And then we have a vent tube right here. I'm going to get a pliers and twist that, and that should come off of there. And then the tank should come out.